I'm Dan Carell, CEO of the Digital Commerce Alliance, and this is Commerce Code, a bi-weekly digital commerce podcast for leaders in card linking, loyalty and digital marketing, mobile wallets and payments, and financial data. Thanks for joining this running conversation with leaders in the industry. And if you like this podcast, come join us at a Digital Commerce Alliance event. You can learn more at www.digcomall.org. This week, I'm talking with Jeff Mankoff from vPromos. vPromos has developed a technology that immediately captures and credits card-linked offers at the point of sale, which is a significant departure from how card-linked offers are typically administered. Jeff is the founder and CEO of vPromos, and today we're talking about current challenges with the CLO ecosystem and its business models. Jeff calls one of those problems catch and release, as in we've caught the customer, but then sometimes we release them again. And we're talking about process and technology simplification as a potential disruptor in card-linked offers and in fintech more broadly. Jeff's got a lot of experience in this space, and it's an interesting conversation today that doesn't just touch on what's exciting about new innovations, but we dig into some of the challenges that everyone faces in the fintech ecosystem. So stay tuned for Simplifying Card-Linked Offers at the Register, a conversation with Jeff Mankoff of vPromos. This episode of Commerce Code is brought to you by Agio, a global leader in engagement platform technologies that create compelling experiences, foster people connections, and cultivate brand advocates worldwide. With more than 45 years of experience, Agio empowers Fortune 500 companies to deliver extraordinary brand experiences for employees, consumers, channel partners, subscribers, and members. Fueled by a holistic engagement ecosystem across workplace engagement, experiential, social activation, customer loyalty, and digital asset experiences, Agio's mission is inspiring people to achieve more, one interaction, transaction, and experience at a time. Agio, engagement unleashed. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on Commerce Code. Where are you joining us from today?
Dan, I'm joining you from Dallas, Texas, the home of the World Series champion Texas Rangers.
It's been a while, Jeff, but you are, I'd say, one of the founding fathers of Commerce Code. We're on episode like 168 or something right now, and you were on episode 18. And so we've got some stuff to catch up on. I'm going to dive right into kind of some substance, and I've seen some frank assessments of the card-linked offers business in the last year or so. And I think the most provocative article, or at least the most provocative title, is out there on the interwebs. It's kind of a blog thing called Card-Linked Offers Are an Expletive Deleted Business. And I won't get into the entire thesis in detail, but basically the author is saying like card-linked offer ecosystem is complicated and it's got a ton of potential, but after however many years of existence, it's still kind of not there yet. And in that person's view, there needs to be some pretty major changes for it to work. Without getting into the diagnosis there, and that article doesn't really even articulate a solution, but does a nice job of laying out what they think the problems are. You know, at vPromos, you've got kind of a very different thesis, than the conventional one about how the card-linked offers market can work better, I think. And so would love to get your angle on, what's your view about that market and how it can be better?
So the way the ecosystem works today, it was designed for the technology that existed back in the 1990s and 2000s. Let's look at the problem first. The problem first that they're trying to solve is how can we do a pay-for-performance card-linked offer model? And it was really designed from the bank's perspective. It's a bank-centric perspective because if you're going to do card-linked offers, the hardest thing to do is to get the customer to provide the credit card number. How do you get them to enter that credit card number? Well, the banks already have the credit card numbers. And that's why the system started out from that perspective that, all right, we have 10 million credit cards on file. Maybe there's a way that we can do card-linked offers this way and just flip a switch and give them to all of our customer base, the bank's customer base, and then we become a publisher, the banks become a publisher. And so that's the ecosystem that we have today. And then the banks go out there or the Cardlytics of the world or the middleman go out and sign up the merchants for these card-linked offers. And the merchants, many of them sign up. But what happens is it turns into a very expensive acquisition model for the merchant. And I would even suggest it's not even an acquisition model for the merchant. It's more of a catch and release model. The way it works today is the consumer will get that card linked offer from the bank. They'll go to the merchant, they'll pay. Nothing happens at the store. They simply pay and they get the receipt, and the receipt shows that they paid 100%. But later they might get an email back that they've got some sort of cash back coming in. And so that's the ecosystem. But the merchant's not even acquiring the customer at that time. They don't know who the customer is at the brick and mortar store. And this is really, card linked offers are designed for the brick and mortar space. And so what's the benefit for the merchant in this model? And so when I started looking at this 10, 15 years ago and getting into the space, I looked at it from the merchant's perspective. If you're a merchant, what do you want? And what you want to do is you want to acquire the customer. You want to know who the customer is. And the best way to do that would be to be able to easily enroll the customer at that merchant's location. And the only way to do that would be with the payment terminal. And we designed a system that was focused on the payment terminal and allows the customer, when they pay with that credit card, to become enrolled. Because when they pay with that credit card, the token of the card can go up to a third-party company like vPromos, and they can make a determination as to whether or not that customer's in that merchant's loyalty program. And if they're not in that merchant's loyalty program, then a message can be sent back to the payment terminal asking that customer, hey, do you want to join this merchant's loyalty program? Nobody's going to have to ask, hey, are you on our loyalty program? The system can automatically track that with this solution.
And it's seeing the same card, right, to be clear. And if that's the case, then I think, in theory, you say, oh, well, people have different credit cards, except for, people are pretty, there's a lot of data on this. Like, people are pretty consistent about using the same sorts of cards for the same sorts of things. So I got to believe that the vast majority of the time, people come back and use the same card at the same place they did last time.
That's absolutely right. And even if they don't do that, the system would allow that person to pay with another credit card. It wouldn't recognize that credit card. So then that person would go through the enrollment system again, put the same mobile phone number in, and then those two credit cards would be linked together. So that's really not a problem. But the main point here is that if you're a merchant, you shouldn't start with acquisition. The place that you should be starting with is to enroll your own customers, is to know your own customers. Focus on your own customers. And if you know who your customers are, presumably you should be able to engage with your customers. You should be able to say, hey, customer, come on back. I mean, that's another piece of the puzzle, that why we're focused on the payment terminal is because the payment terminal can allow that customer to enroll at the point of sale, provide a mobile phone number, as well as agree to the terms and conditions of the Telephone Communication Protection Act that in turn allows that merchant to deliver mobile marketing messages to that customer. There's a lot of reasons why the payment terminal should be the central hub of this entire card linking system.
Well, and, back on the phone number thing too, I think it's kind of an important point in your answer to my question. I hadn't thought about this that much, but the phone number, the mobile phone number, is sort of like the ultimate identifier. You got the card numbers, but they're gonna collapse into a single account, right? For my phone number, and it's gonna know that it's me. So actually, I could have theoretically a bunch of different cards that are all under the same thing, and that kind of solves another just problem in the world generally, right? Which is that you got a bunch of different versions of, in my case, Dan Carell, whereas. And this thing, if I understand it correctly, if I recall correctly, it doesn't care that I'm Dan Carell, right? But it knows the phone number, and it knows that it's got the consent under the TCPA, so it's all good and it's good to go.
That's right. I mean, loyalty is manual. What that means is every time you go to a merchant, they're always asking you for an identifier, and that identifier, 99% of the time, is going to be a mobile phone number. The problem is that no one has figured out, except for vPromos, how to capture that mobile phone number and get the prior written consent necessary for the Telephone Communication Protection Act, so that that merchant can in turn, every time that person shops, send them a thank you for shopping here. You just earned this many points, and send it via text. They can send reminder text messages to come in. They can keep that customer updated as to how many points they have. It opens up the world to the merchant to be able to engage with their own customers if you can get that prior written consent. But if you're going to get that prior written consent, you need to link it to a payment card. And if you do that, then you don't have to ask every time. So this is a very important piece of why these payment terminals are so important. We actually don't call them payment terminals at our company. We call them loyalty engagement devices.
It seems like the experience at the terminal or at the register, if you will, is more immediate, to your earlier description of, you pay in the conventional model, you pay full price as far as you know. And then you find out, you may remember, you may have known, all this kind of stuff. So this is the mystery that we can't solve, right? On it. And after the fact, maybe you find out that there was cash back or whatever. And so in this, it's able to be more immediate. One of my theories about how we tend to get things wrong in general, I mean, in commerce and other areas, is we assume that other people are paying as much attention as we are to something that we care about. And so I think the question mark over a lot of marketing is how much attention is a typical, your target customer paying to any given thing? And I think my view is you should assume the answer is not much. But if I'm standing at a terminal and you're able to remind me, if I'm able to be reminded of everything that's sort of going on there instantly, like in that moment, that's going to be a much more workable thing than if there's sort of this lag, because I think a lot of people, everybody's focused on the moment and they're not necessarily paying attention to like, oh, I have this offer, or oh, this is going to come through in my next statement credit or whatever.
So let's talk about, the more problems with regards to the CardLinx offer ecosystem today. And that's that they have to have a cashback model because it's powered through the associations, the MasterCards, the world, the Visa. They don't have vision down to the payment terminal. So the only way they can do this is come up with some sort of marketing term called cashback and say, hey, this is a great thing. Don't you want to have cash back? But if you're a consumer and you get a $5 coupon or a CardLinx offer, it's going to be more impactful for you to be able to go to that merchant, pay with that credit card, and see that $5 come off right at the point of sale in real time. And it's beneficial to the merchant as well, because if the $5 goes back to a cashback model, to a FIG model in the Rakuten wallet, then that loyalty is to the publisher, not to the merchant. And so if you're the merchant, you want that $5 to come off right at the point of sale. If you're the consumer, you want that $5 to come off right at the point of sale. The only way you can do that is if you integrate this solution into the payment terminal. And so the model, step one for the merchant would be, okay, I want to acquire my own customers. And the reason I want to acquire my own customers and loyalty is it's much less expensive than going out there and pursuing the acquisition model, CardLinx offer model out there, which can be very expensive. I mean, you're going to have to pay 5% to 10% to the customer for the offer. Then you're going to have to pay another 5 to 10% to the publisher. So you're looking at 15 to 20% to acquire that customer, and you're not really acquiring that customer. That customer's then being released because you don't have a means to capture them. So you start with the loyalty piece with these payment terminals and the only way that the merchant can enroll their own customers with this card linking model is with these payment terminals. The other very important piece is that when the customer earns their $5 reward for loyalty and they pay with that credit card, they can get that discount right off at the point of sale. And the same holds true for CardLinx offers. So there's a CardLinx offer from Rakuten or wherever, and we're looking into the future now because this doesn't exist. If you have this new model where you have the payment terminals at the merchant that have this technology, then when they come and pay with that CardLinx offer virtually linked to the credit card, they're going to be able to get that discount at the point of sale. And that's going to be a major advance for the CardLinx offer world and for the merchants.
Commerce Code is brought to you in part by VantageScore. 9 of the top 10 banks and over 3,000 leading banks and fintechs use VantageScore to predict and manage repayment risk. Learn more about the latest advances in credit scoring and how to grow your lending business by leveraging financial inclusion at VantageScore.com.
So I want to talk about the terminals because it's been a thing that was puzzling to me for a long time, and I should know more about this than I do, but I'm about to learn a little more. I have said probably on this before. Born in Canada, I sometimes describe myself as secretly Canadian, and so I go back a lot, at least once or twice a year at least. And it's been for a long time. You've had these handheld wireless terminals, especially in restaurants, that would come to the table. And that's been going on in Europe too, although I'm just more familiar with it happening in Canada. And it just didn't happen in the United States for the longest time. And the technology that seemed to be there was it was identical. It was kind of like, for, 30 years or whatever, the interior of, we used to always have Chevrolet cars in our family. And it's like, I don't think the signal flipper, changed for 40 years across the back half of the 20th century. So like the swiper terminals as far as I could tell, it really hadn't changed for an incredibly long time. And then now you've just seen this kind of explosion of different providers, vendors, hardware. And I think that's what you're talking about. What's the thing driving all of that all of a sudden? Because before we didn't have it. And what can that stuff do? You've sort of alluded to it, but what can it do that it just couldn't do before? Because before it was just, there was nothing there. It was just a swiper thing.
Well, when we got involved with this, we were working with the Verifone 570 terminals. I believe they were Linux-based. I may be mistaken. Devices that faced the counterperson. They were black and white. They had a keypad, a numeric keypad on them. As I said, they faced the counterperson, not the customer. Also, they were oftentimes plugged in via a modem. When we got started, we were talking about modems 10, 12 years ago. And so the advances are the technology has advanced drastically such that these devices are now, they're connected via Wi-Fi that is much more advanced than it was even 10 years ago. The internet infrastructure throughout the United States is much more advanced. I mean, I recall 10 years ago when certain merchants couldn't get the internet that they needed. Android is a major factor. Most, if not all, of these new terminals have the Android software in them, making it much easier for third-party applications to be designed and added to these devices. All of these devices are now color and they're touchscreen. And they basically, the most important thing is they've been turned around and they now face the customers. So when we started out with the Verifone 570 terminal, and about the time when the Telephone Communication Protection Act came out, we couldn't get that prior written consent from the customer on these terminals because they faced the counterperson. So it was impossible to deliver the mobile marketing messages. It was impossible to engage with the customers at the time. These are the major advances that have taken place, and that's why this is the time when terminal integrated card linking is going to, I believe, take off.
People talk about what's important and they do what's easy. And everything you've just described, I knew that these things had gone to an Android base, but it took until a minute ago for me to realize how powerful that is in terms of having a common programming environment, the ability to build apps and everything. And so, that's critical. And obviously it makes it very, easy for consumers to do it. So then maybe the last stream here of this conversation, from the merchant's perspective, I mean, as I've just said, as you've just said, like, all this kind of makes it easier for the consumer to do all the things we want them to do, which I think is the key. From the merchant perspective, like, what's involved in doing this? Is it something that's as simple as, well, now that you've got, these point of sale terminals that are Android based, they're app based, it's just, it doesn't necessarily involve a lot for them to do it? Is it sort of easy, or what's involved for them to be able to make this happen?
Well, you got different types of merchants. If you're talking about a small to medium-sized merchant, the software, what is going to happen is the acquirers and the ISOs will be reselling the payment terminals, and the payment terminals will come with the software already on it. And all they're going to have to do is talk to their ISO agent or bank and flip a switch to turn this loyalty solution on so that it will automatically work because it's embedded in the payment terminal. More complexity takes place when you integrate it with the point of sale, because you're going to want to balance the books, et cetera, and show that the coupon has been taken off. Simple APIs can assist with the integration between the payment terminals and the point of sale. When you're talking about a larger tier 1, tier 2 organization, whenever they switch over to a new payment terminal solution, certainly it's going to be a much more involved solution. But the point is that, yes, it's going to take more time to integrate with a larger organization, but it was going to take a larger organization more time anyway to adopt those new payment terminals into their system. But they do it every 3 years, so it's going to happen. I mean, 3 to 5 years when these tier 1s and tier 2s will start replacing their legacy devices with the new payment terminals that are Android powered. So the technology is much simplified for the smaller organizations, but as I said, large organizations already have their complexity no matter what. But this is not going to add that much complexity, if at all.
Everything you just described, though, it's got to be a much easier flip to this approach than it would have been, I don't know, even a few years ago. And right, because of the software and everything, I'm assuming that some of the move towards the more advanced payment terminals is maybe driven by, underlying privacy or technology needs or whatever. Like, at some point, I assume the data security or those kinds of things just aren't adequate on a really old system.
Well, I mean, I think that is part of the puzzle, but I, look at it from the decision makers. I mean, we've looked at this and we've talked to marketing departments and technology departments. The interesting thing now is that because these devices face the customer, this impacts the marketing department. And when payment terminals face the marketing departments need to start taking control of the acquisition and purchase of these payment terminals because, look at the opportunity to enhance their loyalty systems, enhance their loyalty solutions with regards to acquisition and enrollment of customers. And for a merchant to have a customer's email is a great thing to have, but to have a customer's email linked with a mobile phone number is exponentially better for that marketer, for this chief marketing officer.
That's a big shift. And I suppose probably since the dawn of payment terminals, salespeople have been out there trying to pitch them as a competitive advantage to merchants, from the beginning, but it was probably a bit of a tougher sell. I mean, now that makes total sense, right? Like the customer experience is just better. And what you can do with it is, I think it's better. And what you can do with it as a merchant is better. And so for real, it's a competitive advantage. You need to get on this new stuff.
If you're a merchant and you have brick and mortar stores, don't you want to know and recognize every one of your customers? Today, that's not the case. I mean, today you go to the store and they ask you every time, are you in our loyalty program, if they have a loyalty program? And the problem there is that the counterpersons probably don't even ask that question. We did a secret shopper experiment and found that with the manual loyalty program where the counterperson was required to ask, are you in our loyalty program? The counterperson would only ask 8% of the time. So that's just not working. Manual just doesn't work because you have the training issue, you have shy counterpersons. The future is going to be, you have to automate this. And the way to automate this is with the payment terminal and with software that automates the enrollment and capture and recognition of the merchant's own customers. And so if you don't have that, then you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I mean, and there's automated checkout, and I don't know what the future of that is. I haven't taken a hard look at that lately, but you've got a lot of instances where there isn't a human standing there, or at least not one per thing. Last thought though, Jeff, what do you think of this? Taylor Swift's selling a lot of vinyl. At some point people get sick of the new stuff and they're like, I want to go back. So do you think there's a counter investment? Like, should I invest in, the triplicate, like the carbon copy stuff, remember? And there's a very satisfying swipey move that I haven't had that happen for, taxis were the last holdouts that did the little swipey thing. There was something kind of tactile about it that was kind of nice. Do you think the kids are going to go back and want to do that in the future? Is that a thing? I think it might not happen, but someone out there, kind of like people who have collections of Blackberries, someone out there probably collects those little like card swiper deals with the carbon copies.
I've got a display of old Palm Pilots.
Yeah.
And, yeah. There was a Rex. Do you remember the Rex device, which was like a credit card type device that had a display on it that would interface and connect with your ACT personal information manager? And so even before mobile phones came out, I had in my wallet one of these Rex devices with all my contacts and calendar items, and love that stuff. And I think it's an important piece of the puzzle with regards to why we're here today with the card linking, because people want to simplify their life and make things easy. And personal information managers made things easy. And I think card linked offers that can be redeemed at the point of sale or make things easy for everybody and are the right way to go for merchants and consumers. And I think people want easy.
As cool as Palm Pilots were, Blackberries, whatever, there's always a next thing, and there's always a reason for the next thing. And, you're working on the next thing, Jeff, which is awesome. Good to have some innovators out there. Good to talk to you about this, and look forward to seeing what's next with vPromos.
Thank you, Dan.
Commerce Code is sponsored by Pentadata, the all-in-one financial data API. Whether it is bank account data, credit card transaction data, or credit reports and credit scores, Pentadata has it all in one simple and easy-to-use API. With coverage of over 6,000 banks, over 200 million credit files, and 60 million merchants, you can get all the data you need for your apps at pentadatainc.com. Commerce Code is a bi-weekly podcast bringing you conversations with executives who are leading the way in digital commerce. If you like Commerce Code, your company should join the Digital Commerce Alliance and become part of our mission of advancing trade for good through standard setting, industry networking, conferences, and best practice sharing. Check out our website at www.digcomall.org. On behalf of DCA, have a great week.